Hello to all hairdressers of the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Welcome, my name is Berni Ottjes. I'm an international artist and colorist for L'Oréal Professional. Today we're going to talk about French balayage and gloss. As you can see in the back, you can see my new collection and it's called Power Dust. So in my masterclass we're going to talk about two different techniques for balayage, and of course we're going to talk about French glossing. How you can use French glossing in your salon. We have the French glossing with one shade of gloss, and we have a new kind of techniques and it's called multi-gloss. Multi-gloss I'm using a lot in my salon on my clients to get more rentability and more profit in your salon. So you will create your own signature so that you will stand out in your mancraftship of coloring. And that's very important these days. How we can get the clients back in the salon, how we can give them sort of new color service, and most important is that you will create your own signature. So it makes you a little bit more special as colorist. So the clients will see that you will using different techniques and different glossing. So today we're going to talk about, of course, metal detox. Metal detox, I always use this on all my balayage and on all my glosses. So even if I don't bleach, if I do a global color, I always use metal detox because I believe it's very protective, and of course it's very beautiful when you want to make your colors more equal from roots till ends. So it's very important to use it in your salon. Next to that, when we talk about balayage, a lot of times people ask me what I'm using on my balayage. The first technique I'm going to show you will be a foil technique with a lot of depth inside. The product I'm using is the Blonde Studio 9, a new bleach product that will lift up to 9 tones, and especially for face framing or quick color service, this is the ideal bleach powder to use. You can use it with 20 or with 30 volt. So another product I'm gonna show today is the Blonde Studio 7. And the Blonde Studio 7 is very easy to use when we talk about hair painting. So hair painting is all open air. So when we do the balayage with freehand. So Blonde Studio 7, a very powerful and very easy product to use, especially for blending with the balayage. When we talk about glossing and when we talk about colors, I'm using in my salon three families. So first of all, we're going to talk about, of course, the new launch of Dia Light. I'm going to talk about with you, if you see the color results, how I got this color result and what I'm using in the salon on my guests. So, of course, the new Dia Light, you will see how I'm using it, what kind of tones I'm gonna use, and how I work with this Power Dust collection. So you will see that I will use the new clear of Dia Light. You will see how powerful it is when you add it to your products, and a lot of more and more tricks. We're gonna talk about Inoa. We're going to talk about the beautiful coloration of Inoa, and we're going to talk about Majorelle Cool Cover. So you will see that all the dolly heads that I colored, they have all one family. From Inoa to Dia Light to Dia Recess and to Majorelle Cool Cover or Majorelle Cool Enforced. So I hope you will enjoy. And I think the techniques I'm going to show you, you can use tomorrow in the salon, because these days I think it's very important that what you will learn here today, you can use tomorrow right away on your guest in the salon. and you will see that my colors are looking very luxury, and that's what we want. A shorter time of applying, but the colors must look very luxury these days. And you will see that that the surface that I'm doing in my salon, it's much smaller just by do placements of color. I think we're just gonna begin, and I will be there for question and answers after you see the masterclass. So if you have any questions for me, just write them down and we will talk about it later. Or you do it in the comments. Okay? Okay. First of all, I'm going to show you one technique that I'm using in my salon, and it's called a foulage with foils. Of course, sometimes when you have to pre-lighten a little bit more and you want to do a quick color surface, sometimes a face framing is a very beautiful technique to use in your salon. We all know what a face framing is. Face framing is that we just color the face frame around the face. But what I'm going to do with the foil technique is that you will see that the technique and the sectioning that I'm making, it's from the top of the head, and you will see that my sectioning is just behind the ear. So I'm not going to color on the ear, but just behind the ear. So that means that if I'm doing a face frame on both sides, you will have a lot of impact when we talk about coloring. So this is my sectioning, and we're gonna start with diagonal lines with the foil. I'm gonna take some foils with me, and we're gonna start with a diagonal line. So you will start diagonal from the back to the front. And we're gonna build the color up. So that means that we start on the ears. And you will see with this kind of technique, we're gonna use a lot of structure in your coloring sectioning. So that means that I'm gonna play in one section with baby highlights and chunky pieces. So by doing a baby highlight, chunky piece, baby highlight, chunky piece, you create a lot of dimension in your coloring. And that's very important. By dimension means that when you're going to color, that you will not even your sectioning, but you really go from a baby highlight, a chunky piece, baby highlight, a chunky piece. So you will create a lot of dimension in your foil technique. So the first diagonal line is a foil technique, and we just gonna, you will see on the foil, chunky piece, baby highlights, chunky piece, baby highlights. So you will see that I'm using a lot of different weaves to get the result with a lot of dimension in the hair. The New Blonde Studio, I really love that because it's powerful and it goes really quick. So you always apply enough product. You use it with your brush horizontal when you apply the product. You really be sure that you will apply enough, and on the beginning you will fade the color very softly vertical. As you can see, less on top and more to the ends, to get a beautiful natural blend. And what's very important, that when you create your foil technique, you already be sure that you will have a blend already with your bleach or balayage technique. It will provide you a very easier way afterwards when we're gonna gloss and we're gonna tone. So the first sectioning I did. of the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Welcome, my name is Berni Ottjes. I'm an international artist and colorist for L'Oréal Professional. Today we're going to talk about French balayage and gloss. As you can see in the back, you can see my new collection and it's called Power Dust. So in my masterclass we're going to talk about two different techniques for balayage, and of course we're going to talk about French glossing. How you can use French glossing in your salon. We have the French glossing with one shade of gloss, and we have a new kind of techniques and it's called multi-gloss. Multi-gloss I'm using a lot in my salon on my clients to get more rentability and more profit in your salon. So you will create your own signature so that you will stand out in your mancraftship of coloring. And that's very important these days. How we can get the clients back in the salon, how we can give them sort of new color service, and most important is that you will create your own signature. So it makes you a little bit more special as colorist. So the clients will see that you will using different techniques and different glossing. So today we're going to talk about, of course, we're going to talk about metal detox. Metal detox, I always use this on all my balayage and on all my glosses. So even if I don't bleach, if I do a global color, I always use metal detox because I believe it's very protective. And of course, it's very beautiful when you want to make your colors more equal from roots till ends. So it's very important to use it in your salon. Next to that, when we talk about balayage, a lot of times people ask me what I'm using on my balayage. The first technique I'm going to show you will be a foil technique with a lot of depth inside. The product I'm using is the Blonde Studio 9, a new bleach product that will lift up to 9 tones, and especially for face framing or quick color service, this is the ideal bleach powder to use. You can use it with 20 or with 30 volt. So another product I'm gonna show today is the Blonde Studio 7. And the Blonde Studio 7 is very easy to use when we talk about hair painting. So hair painting, it's all open air. So when we do the balayage with freehand. So Blonde Studio 7, a very powerful and very easy product to use, especially for blending with the balayage. When we talk about glossing and when we talk about colors, I'm using in my salon three families. So first of all, we're going to talk about, of course, the new launch of Dia Light. I'm going to talk about with you, if you see the color results, how I got this color result and what I'm using in the salon on my guest. So, of course, the new Dia Light, you will see how I'm using it, what kind of tones I'm gonna use, and how I work with this Power Dust collection. So you will see that I will use the new clear of Dia Light. You will see how powerful it is when you add it to your products, and a lot of more and more tricks. We're gonna talk about Inoa. We're going to talk about the beautiful coloration of Inoa, and we're going to talk about Majorelle Cool Cover. So you will see that all the dolly heads that I colored, they have all one family. From Inoa to Dia Light to Dia Recess and to Majorelle Cool Cover or Majorelle Cool Enforced. So I hope you will enjoy. And I think the techniques I'm going to show you, you can use tomorrow in the salon, because these days I think it's very important that what you will learn here today, you can use tomorrow right away on your guest in the salon. and you will see that my colors are looking very luxury, and that's what we want. A shorter time of applying, but the colors must look very luxury these days. And you will see that that the surface that I'm doing in my salon, it's much smaller just by do placements of color. I think we're just gonna begin, and I will be there for question and answers after you see the masterclass. So if you have any questions for me, just write them down and we will talk about it later. Or if you do it in the comments. Okay? Okay. First of all, I'm going to show you one technique that I'm using in my salon, and it's called a foulage with foils. Of course, sometimes when you have to pre-lighten a little bit more and you want to do a quick color surface, sometimes a face framing is a very beautiful technique to use in your salon. We all know what a face framing is. Face framing is that we just color the face frame around the face. But what I'm going to do with the foil technique is that you will see that the technique and the sectioning that I'm making, it's from the top of the head, and you will see that my sectioning is just behind the ear. So I'm not going to color on the ear, but just behind the ear. So that means that if I'm doing a face frame on both sides, you will have a lot of impact when we talk about coloring. So this is my sectioning, and we're gonna start with diagonal lines with the foil. I'm gonna take some foils with me, and we're gonna start with a diagonal line. So you will start diagonal from the back to the front. And we're gonna build the color up. So that means that we start on the ears. And you will see with this kind of technique, we're gonna use a lot of structure in your coloring sectioning. So that means that I'm gonna play in one section with baby highlights and chunky pieces. So by doing a baby highlight, chunky piece, baby highlight, chunky piece, you create a lot of dimension in your coloring. And that's very important. By dimension means that when you're going to color, that you will not even your sectioning, but you really go from a baby highlight, a chunky piece, baby highlight, a chunky piece. So you will create a lot of dimension in your foil technique. So the first diagonal line is a foil technique, and we just gonna, you will see on the foil, chunky piece, baby highlights, chunky piece, baby highlights. So you will see that I'm using a lot of different weaves to get the result with a lot of dimension in the hair. So I'm using the Blonde Studio 9, the new Blonde Studio. I really love that because it's powerful and it goes really quick. So you always apply enough product. You use it with your brush horizontal when you apply the product. You really be sure that you will apply enough, and on the beginning you will fade the color very softly vertical. As you can see, less on top and more to the ends, to get a beautiful natural blend. And what's very important, that when you create your foil technique, you already be sure that you will have a blend already with your bleach or balayage technique. It will provide you a very easier way afterwards when we're gonna gloss and we're gonna tone. So the first sectioning I did, balayage, weave, diagonal, and we're gonna close the foil, And so we're gonna build up the color. So my next section also will be a diagonal line, but a very, very, very thin one. A very, very thin one. And with this passé, we're gonna use a paddle. So that means that we are going to use, we're not going to do a weave, we're going to bleach the whole paddle. So your next sectioning will be the whole paddle that we're gonna bleach. Also, be sure that you always will apply enough product, and with this building up of the sectionings, we will create a lot of dimension by doing a weave or by doing a full sectioning of bleach. Be careful when you're doing the full sectioning of bleach, your line, your sectioning should be very, very, very thin. But the effect that you will have on the end result, it's amazing. You will see that in a shorter time, you can do this technique in 30 minutes, and it will give you a lot of dimension and a lot of lightness in the color technique. So you see, I'm just building up slide by slide, and we're going all the way up to the top of the head. So you see, after that I did 2 diagonal lines on the hair, now we're going to create a horizontal line. So that means that I'm taking it backwards to the front. I'm going to take a diagonal line. And you will see that this line will create a lot of depth in the hair. So if I take the sectioning up, then you will clearly see that my sectioning, my horizontal sectioning, is very small in the front, but it will be very big in the back. So if I'm doing my weave on top of this sectioning, so I start in the back, baby highlights, a lot of small baby highlights, all the way to the front, and in the front I take a chunky piece. This I leave down, so this will be or your natural color or your base color, and it will create the 2-dimensional depth in the hair. So the weave I'm gonna bleach out. And we are going to foil. And you see very, very small baby highlights from the back and a chunky piece in the front. This we're gonna bleach from roots till ends. Just blend it a little bit. And we go all the way to the lengths. And be sure that you really use enough product on your lengths, because a lot of times when you don't have enough product, your lifting will not be equal or will not be as much as you like. So always add enough of product and be sure that your lengths are full saturated with the color. You see, beautiful blend on top. Always less is more, and when you go down, you will saturate the whole color. So you see that we created the technique now with 2 diagonal lines, 1 horizontal line. Now we start all over again, 2 diagonal lines, 1 horizontal line. So you will see how we build up the color. 2 diagonal lines underneath, 1 horizontal. And you will see that the color that still is inside, that will create your depth in your color. So the next section is also, once again, we take the whole section up and we're gonna create to your side sweep or midsection. It depends if your client have a midsection or your client has a side sweep. you always go from your point, you start your highlights to the midsection of your side sweep or the midsection. So this is, once again, this is still my diagonal line, and we are going to do the same, very small baby highlights, chunky piece, baby highlight, and a chunky piece. So you will see that I will create a lot of lightness in this face frame, but still I'm creating the dimension of the depth. So you see perfectly baby highlight, chunky piece, baby highlights. We add the product. Be sure that it really sticks well on your foil. And we're gonna blend it out on top. Just blend it out. So your bleach will also have already a perfect blend on top that will create already one technique for your glossing. So a lot of times when we are applying the product horizontal, it will bleach too much on the roots and you will have to do a correction, or you will have to do a shadow again. So be careful, just blend it out very carefully, so you will create a beautiful blend on the roots, and on the ends we're going all the way through the hair, and we will create a lot of lightness in the lengths. So my first section again. So my next section, once again, is a diagonal line. You see it's a very thin line, because this one is again a full section that we're gonna bleach. So it will be, you see, the full petal. So your next section is not a weave, but it's a full petal we are going to bleach. So you will see that I apply enough product, and on top we're gonna blend. So that means vertical, are we going to blend it on the roots, so it will have already a beautiful flow in my bleach. And in the end we will create full saturation of the color, and we will be sure that the color in the lengths is enough, so we will create a lot of lightness in the lengths. So less on top, more saturation in the lengths. So here we will create my second diagonal line. And once again, on top, so you will see that what I'm creating here is that it will be shorter and shorter the more I go up. So once again, my next section is my horizontal line on top. And once again, we will start with the baby highlights in the back and a chunky piece in the front. So when you take your horizontal line, you clearly will see that it will start in the front from small to wide in the back. So from small to wide in the back. So it will create a lot of dimension. So in the back, we start with baby highlights all the way to the front, and in the front, we take a chunky piece. This will be your natural color again, and so we will build up the color further on. So. Blending on the top, and we go all the way down to a full saturation of the color in the lengths. And you will see when you're going to try it on your clients, it will be a very, very effective and quick color service. So it will provide you more profit and rentability for your salon. So it takes you only 30 minutes, and you can do 2 color sessions at half an hour. So you can have 2 colors in your salon. You can do one technique in the positijd of your foils. You can do another color technique. So it will lift up your rentability in the salon. So on the end, you see, I'm always finished with my last section. So on top, you will end up with the last sectioning. So you will see you build it up from small to back again, your triangle. And on top, it depends a little bit how your client wants it. If she wants it very light on top, you can do a surface bleach. If she wants to have it very natural, I always suggest to do a baby highlight. You take the full sectioning up, very small baby highlights, and in the back you take a very chunky piece that will allow you to get and to create more dimension in the front. So you take your foil, your last sectioning, and you will create a lot of dimension. Blend it out on the roots. And we go once way all the way to the lengths. So you will see that with this technique, you can do this 2 or 3 times on each side. It depends a little bit on the thickness of your client, of course. So if the client has thicker hair, you can do this technique 3 times. If the hair is thinner, I advise you to do it 2 times. So the technique is 2 diagonal lines, 1 horizontal, 2 diagonal lines, 1 horizontal. So each slide, 2 diagonal, 1 horizontal, it's 1 technique. So you can do that on each side 2 or 3 times, depending on the thickness of your client's hair. So, if you can see when I'm finished this, I only have now 6 foils on one side, so that's why it goes very easy. You see that in between I'm creating a lot of dimension by using the triangles from small to big. You see I still have a lot of depth, natural depth inside, and when you see the end result later on, then you will see what I mean by the effect of using this technique. So this is very effective in your salon and it goes very quickly. So if we see, you want to see the result, this is the result I did on that technique. So you see it's a beautiful balayage. It's a very effective way. Of course I'm using foils because I really want to pre-lighten the hair. So first of all, you put in the technique with the foils, and afterwards I did a coloration. I did a coloration with the Majorel Cool Cover, and I'm using the 7.82 in combination with the 7.18. So with the 7.18 and the 7.82 gives a very beautiful hazelnut shadow in the hair. Don't make the shadow too wide, keep the shadow very short, so you have a lot of lightness in the lengths of your foil technique. So afterwards, what I used is our newest Dia Light. and it's the 9-2 and the 7-3. So the 9-2 and the 7-3. So the 9-2, very beautiful if we talk about neutralization. Neutralization of our bleaching parts. So I did Majorelle cool cover on the roots, 7.82 with 7.18, or even if you want to neutralize more, you can use the 7.11 in combination with the 7.82 with 20 vol. Be sure that you use the 20 vol because we need the 20 vol for the neutralization. In the lengths, I did a midsection with the new Dialight 7.3 to give it a very natural goldish mid-blonde effect. And I end up the ends with the 9-2. So also the 9-2, a new color and a new shade. And it looks very beautiful on the lengths of the hair. As you can see, it gives a beautiful neutralization in the lengths. So if you see the technique, what I meant by doing the depth in the hair, you see that inside the color technique, you still have a lot of depth. So that means that inside you saw the triangles from, when you go from small to big, it will create a lot of depth inside. I hope you like it. It's a beautiful, beautiful par l'amour, very light mocha tone. And the cool cover, it's perfect for neutralization on the roots. And in the length, you can perfectly add the Dia light on your lengths for neutralization and for giving a little bit more color and depth. So, once again, a 9-2 on the lengths, 9-2 with 9 vol, a 7-3 in the midsection, the 7-3 with 6 vol, and the 7.82 with 7.18 or 7.11, it depends on your neutralization, with 20 vol on the roots. So after you apply the color, you just do a small smudge of shadow, not too big, because if you go too low, you create too much depth and you will lose the length, you will lose the lightness in your length. So I always advise a small smudge on the roots, and also be sure that 80% of your color is your lightest color. So if you see it also on the sides, it gives you a beautiful blend and it gives you like a new color shade that you may be not using yet in your salon, but it will create a beautiful signature for yourself and for your salon. Okay. So this was color technique number 1. So I'm going to do another beautiful freehand paint. And when we talk about freehand paint, it's very important, of course, the blending. Freehand, it's very easy in your salon because you can do it quickly. And the best product for freehand painting is our Blonde Studio 7, because it's a clay. It's dry outside, it's moisture inside, so you can easily work without foil and without any sweet mesh in between. Of course, you always can do that, but because it's dry on the outside, you can easily put the sections on each other. So when we talk about freehand paint, it's very important that you create some dimension in your freehand paint. So my next color technique is a paint, and you see here the result what I did with the paint. When we talk about glossing afterwards, you see that I'm using warm tones, cool tones, and we had a lot of shadow. But first of all, we need the paint in the hair. So there we're gonna talk about. But this is already, here you can already see the end result. We're going to work afterwards from a level 4, 5, all the way down to a level 10 and 7 in the midsections. So when we're gonna start with the freehand paint, Sectioning is very important also, but also use face frames, because face frames these days are easy to apply. It gives you a quick color surface, just as I did with the foil technique. When I'm doing freehand paint, clean work always makes the dream work. So the cleaner you work, the more beautiful your paint will be. So I always advise to have a brush with you, so you can each sectioning make very smooth and be clear that your sectioning is very neat to work on. That's very important. So we're gonna work with our newest brush, Balayage brush from L'Oreal. It's smaller, it's firm, and it's beautiful to paint. So I'm just making my clay powder Blonde Studio 7, and you can add 30 volt to it, because when it's free hand painting, you need a little bit more lifting. So I always advise 30 volt if you really want to pre-light. If you use it on brunettes, you can use a level, you can use 20 volt just to lift up 2 levels. Now I want it to lift up more, about 7 levels, so I'm using the 30 volt. Be sure that your emulsion is very clean. So, gonna do my gloves on. I'm just gonna use the other side of the doll heads to create the paints. So painting in our salon, it's very popular because it goes quickly, it's fun to do, and it gives your clients a totally different experience of coloring. Of course, when you do the freehand paint, you can do different techniques. So we're going to talk about V-sections, we're going to talk about, of course, always weave sections in your freehand paint, and we're going to talk about surface bleach. Surface bleach is one of the things I'm using a lot in my salon, because surface bleach give you a lot of lightness in the hair, but you still keeps the depth inside. So when we go into start with the balayage, I'm going step by step by each sectioning. So you can use each sectioning, I'm gonna color. You can use that in each sections you're gonna paint, or you can make a combination of those two. I like to use different combinations when we talk about freehand paint, because it gives more dimension in your color. Once again, always when you are making your sectioning, be sure that your sectioning behind the ear is very big, that you have a lot of length and wideness to work on. The less in the back, the more natural it can be. So, when we start with the technique and the result you saw on the dolls, my first pedal is a surface bleach. So, a few of you who already seen some masterclasses of me know that I really like the surface bleach, because it gives you a lot of dimension, and as you saw on the end result, it creates a lot of lightness, even if your base is a level 5 or it's a level 4. At least you will have to lift up more than 4 levels to create the dimension by dark and by light. So, with the surface bleach, it's very important that when we start, that we really start blending carefully. You apply the product and we start blending the total surface of the hair. You see that I keep my brush very smooth, and you go all the way to the lengths. But what's very important is that you not bleach through the hair. So with this you create only a lift on top of the hair. It will give you a lot of dimension, but it still looks like a heavy paint. But because the trick is that we're not going through the hair, so underneath you see it's dark, and we keep that because I wanted to keep the depth inside but the lightness on top. So we work all the way through. Be sure that each section you take, the hair is very clean, so it will not give you any knots. And on the lengths, we going through the hair. So that means the more we go down, the more I'm going through the hair now. So 1/3 of your hair will be a surface bleach. So on top here, we are creating a surface bleach. We just blend it out. And 2/3 or 1/3 of the hair, you can go all the way through. That means we're going to bleach through the hair on both sides. Take some product on your gloves. You can work very easily by doing saturation in the back, but keeping your depth on top. So once again, it looks like a heavy paint, but if you work with this technique, you will see that you will keep a lot of dimension because inside it's dark, and the more light you want, the more higher you go with your bleach on the other side. So on both sides we're gonna bleach. And the more depth you want, the lower you stay. So it depends on the color result you want. Smoothen it out very carefully, and we go all the way down. In the back we do a smudge. Be sure that you always have a beautiful blend, because if you don't have a blend, you will have stains in the hair, and we don't want that. So, because it's a powder, you can leave it freehand. And of course, if you want to have more lift, you can always use a foil on the ends just to lift up a little bit more. But with the freehand paint, I always advise to do it like this, because it gives a more natural effect. So, a next section that we can do is a diagonal V. And with this technique, you create a lot of dimension inside. So, we take a big section up. And we're gonna create a V shape. So that means a V shape in that technique. So we will create a little triangle on top. So inside we have the triangle, and we're gonna work in the V shape. So you take all the sections up, and we're gonna create a V shape in your bleach. So when we start to doing the V shape, it's very important that you have firm lines. The more you go to the front, the more you can do a very light part in the front, and the more you go to the back, the more lighter it can be. So in the front, I create some more lightness. In the back, I'm going to use a lower point, so I will create a dimension. And then we will start blending the color. So blending the color in a V shape, diagonally high in the front to create some lightness, and very soft. You see what I'm doing? I'm creating dimension, but very soften it out. And you work all the way through. Blending is very important. Work really steady with your brush, horizontal, and just make small movements by creating a very soft blend on top. And the more we go down, the more we create dimension. With the V shape, I always create 1/3 on the points we go through the hair. So we leave it lower here to create a lot of dimension underneath. Underneath, we just blend it. Be sure that you always have your surface bleach on top, because I don't want to create any marks. So when I'm going to tone it, I already have a beautiful blend. Underneath, just blend it out, and we created a beautiful V shape. So my next section on top will be a horizontal line. So the sectioning that I just took to the other side, you see it's the one that's on top. It's in the middle of your V section. So to create some dimension, I will leave the point out. So you create your point, leave your point out, it will cover and it will blend your V shape. And we're starting to do a surface bleach. So that means if you want to keep it very natural, you can do a weave. You can weave the sectionings out. If you want to have a more powerful lightening, you can do a total surface bleach. But very, very soft. So you see, less is more. Very soft. And to the full saturation of the lengths. So keep it very soft on top, and the more we go down, the more lightness we will creating. So you can imagine with this technique, you have a beautiful face frame that's lighter. The one here that's on top, I'm going to create a lot of depth because I have the passé, that's the base color or the natural color. And this one will be a very soft surface bleach. Here I will be sure that I'm not going all the way through. Keep it dark inside and just leave and let it blend it out very, very, very softly. On the ends, we just going 1/3 of the hair. We apply a little bit more product and we just be sure that on the end we created a full saturation on both sides. So this is how we create a lot of lightness in the hair, but also a lot of dimension, as you saw in the end result we are going to create. It looks like a heavy paint, but trust me, if you're going to work with it, it's very easy, it goes quick, but it's very effective in your color technique. So if we reach the top and we're going to end up with the last sectioning, we're gonna end up once again with a face frame in the front. So I take out my V. You see on top, I create another V section. Be sure that your triangle on top, you still have the triangle to cover. and we're going all the way down with the V shape. The more lighter you want to have it in the front, the more you can go through your color. So that means the lighter you want it in the front, the more wider you can take your first sectioning. The only thing is, you see, it's a thick part. I'm not going through, and I'm creating a lightening in the face frame. Not going through, keep the depth underneath. And we create very, very soft blending. In the back, I just create a diagonal line. So that means that I'm staying lower in the back. So it gives you a little bit like diagonal V shape. And work all the way through. So the ends, I want to create a little bit more lightness. And with this kind of techniques, you can create in a quick time a lot of color change, of course. And it will be a perfect canvas to do a multi-gloss later on. Because of course, for each multi-gloss or dimension in the hair, you need at least a few different levels of your natural base color and your bleach or your balayage. So you see, blending very softly on top. Be careful that we're not going through the hair. On the back, on the ends, we're going through. Just on the ends to create the dimension. Just be sure that you really go through the hair with your product, blend the back, be sure that your back is blended to don't have any marks, and you have your next section. So the beautiful thing as a colorist is when we talk about balayage, a lot of hairdressers think about lightness. I think a lot about the depth that stays inside. By my balayages, you can always see the depth inside, and that gives the balayage a more natural and beautiful blending and flow, because I just bleached the surface of the hair. So on top, I still have my last section, my last triangle. You see the little triangle. And we can do a surface bleach. We can take the whole paddle on a surface bleach and go all the way through if you really want to have it very light. If the client wants a little bit more depth, like you saw on the end result, I just take the whole sections up. I'm doing a 3-point, leave out the depth underneath, leave that on top of your sectioning, and you just have a 3-point. So that means that we're gonna work with those 3 points to just break the surface of your top color. So when you have the 3-point, we're going to start and we're going to blend it out. Just doing a beautiful paint, very soft, because we just want to create a very, very softness on top. I just want to break the surface of the base color. So I don't need a lot of lift on top. I just want to create softness, especially when you start your blending. Be sure that it's very smooth. The smoother there is, the more perfect your blend will be, and then the more better your toners will look afterwards when you're gonna gloss it. So on the ends, you just smoothen it out very softly. You see, very, very soft. But when we go all the way through the ends, we want to create more lightness, so we're going all the way through. You see here, I'm going a little bit higher, also in the back. Just be sure that my top layer has already the beautiful blend of your shadow, keep it a little bit lower, and on the ends we're going all the way through. Soften it out and leave it like this. So that means that with this painting, in like 3 or 4 different levels, by using different technique of painting, you can have a lot of dimension in your hair. So you saw one petal, horizontal line with the surface bleach. You can do each section if you want to create a very light effect. Then the next effect was the V section. So the V section, both sides diagonal, high in the front, lower in the back. And then you have the horizontal line on top of the triangle that you can do a full petal till the roots, or you create more depth like I did on top, and we create some lightness in the lengths. I really, personally, when we talk about hair painting, I really like the difference in the paints, because the more layers you paint differently, the more dimension you will create in your paint. But also the technique of paint should give you a service of 20-30 minutes in your salon. So it also goes very quickly. So if I take the end result, and you see that with this result you don't create any, you create a lot of lightness because of, you remember, the full petals in the hair. But if I'm opening the hair, you will see that inside I have a lot of depth. And the depth is because I'm creating, of course, V-shapes. You see in the result that if I take the sectioning open, you see that inside I have the depth, and on the side, on the outside, I create the lift. Inside depth, the ends very smooth, sides very high. And when we talk about lightness with the horizontal line, you remember, I create a very soft blend, and then I go all the way down. So you see that each time when I open the hair, that my sectioning is every time different, but it looks very, very luxury, the color. You won't have any bands, because if you take the hair to the back, you will see that with the dimension of the surface bleach, you always create underneath the darkness, but on top you always will have the bleach. So you always will have on top a perfect bleach. The darker your base is, the higher your oxidation will be, and I always advise to use at least on a level 5 or 6 30 volt to get a level 9, 8, 9 or even 10 if you have a level 6. So you will see that with this kind of technique you can create beautiful depths and beautiful, in the back a little bit more natural, and you see on the sides we create much more dimension. And dimension is very important with the end result. So for me what's very important on my clients is when I'm doing this kind of techniques, it gives the color a very luxurious effect. You see a lot of depth inside, but outside we create beautiful layers that we made with our freehand paint. A beautiful combination of cool and warm tones. It's all about multi-gloss, where we're going to talk about over. And I'm going to show you now how you can apply multi-gloss. So when we talk about balayage and when we talk about a normal glossing, we're just using our color and we're making the zigzag just to use one toner in the length. So we're using French balayage, Majorelle or Inoa on the roots, and we're using Dia Light, one shade in the lengths. With my multi-gloss, with my colors, I like to work with multi-gloss because I think multi-gloss gives you more profit and more rentability in your salon, and it doesn't take you more time. It's just you need 2 different shades in the bottles, and with 2 different shades you can easily apply a beautiful multi-gloss. First of all, the multi-gloss will give you more profit in your salon because in my salon we have a rate of balayage and gloss, 1 toner, and we have balayage and multi-gloss. So that means that we at least use 2 kinds of toners on the hair. I personally really like it because it looks very luxurious, and it gives your craftsmanship a signature. So it will be different than other looks that you will creating. So with the multi-gloss, how you create multi-gloss? Of course, when you making your multi-gloss, it's all depending on the shades you are using on your guest. Here I did a very cool tone on the roots, and after the gloss I did a 5.1, so the 5.11 of the Dia Light I made the root shadow with, and I did a little bit of 5.20, just a drip of 5.20. It gives a perfect neutralization on your roots, and it will keep longer. So it means that your depth color will stay longer in the hair. So the other color I used is the 7.23, and the 7.23 I have here, the 7.23 with clear. A lot of times when I did this collection, powder dust, I use a lot of clear. Don't forget the power of clear. I think the new clear is more jelly, it's easier to apply, and it will soften your base color. So I really like that my colors are already more pastel. So the difference in the Dia Light is that we can work with 6 volt or with 9 volt. I always advise when you do multi-gloss, use on the 7.23 6 volt and use on your lightest color, as you see here, is the 10.12. You can use on the 10.12, you can use 9 volt. So only 2 kinds of colors, but we call it multi-gloss on your clients. So the 7.23 I did with 6 volt, and the 10.12 I blend out with 9 volt, just to give more difference in shade. The 6 volt will create a little bit more depth from mid to length, and the 7.23 I just added a little drop of 7.4. 7.4, not too much, just a drop when you have the 7.23, just to give it a little bit more warmth, because of course the 7.23, it's a beautiful pearl gold, but I just want to add on the bleach part a little bit more warmth. And I always advise, always add some clear when you're doing blending with your gloss, because clear makes the color very soft and it will blend out more and easier to apply, and it goes a lot quicker. My advice is always to use 2/3 of color and 1/3 of clear, just to have a right balance in color pigment and in very softening to the lengths. So this is one of the colors out of the collection. I hope you really like it. And I'm just going to show you how I'm toning in the salon. Because a lot of times when I'm talking about multi-gloss, people think that multi-gloss is a very difficult technique to use in the salon. But it's not. It's just that if we apply it, we have not one, but we have just two colors. So you can do glossing in your salon on the backwash, you can do it on wet hair, you can do it on dry hair. I always advise, it depending on the color result you want it to have. If you want to have the color more depth, then you're going to put it on dry hair. If the hair is more towel dry, it will soften your color out a little bit. So it depends also a little bit on the structure and the healthiness of the hair. If the hair is very thin and dry and porous, I advise to do it on towel dry, that it's still a little bit wet. It's more softened and it's more moisturizing for the color. So if I'm in my salon and I work on a multi-gloss, I'm doing it in front of the mirror. You can also do it in the backwash, but I think if you charge a little bit more for multi-gloss, you can also do the treatment a little bit more exclusive than when we are using only one gloss. So when I had my color, this is the 7.23 in combination with the 7.18 of Dialite. You see that after my balayage that I still have a lot of, it's lightened up, but it still has a little bit the yellow parts, and of course, because not every hair will be white or will be very pale, but I'm just going to show you how powerful that Dialite can be in the neutralization. So don't estimate the power of Dialite. So when I apply my base, my color, you can make a big shadow, but you also can make a small shadow. I always advise the smaller the shadow will be, the longer your light result will be in the lens. So when I apply my color, I always will do it in soft parts. So you will see I will add it very softly, take my next section out, and again apply, and again take your next section out, and you see that I am applying very smoothly each section. I apply my gloss and I go all the way to the lens. So in the front, just take it out, smoothen a bit, but not too much. The smaller you keep your regrow, the more lightness you create in the lens. So it goes very easily and very quick if you apply it like this. Most of the time when we are applying a shadow, a lot of time people take the shadow too much through the lens, so you will create a lot of dampness. But it's nice to just create a small. And with the multi-gloss, you will create, with your next color, you will create the blend. So you see it goes very easy. You apply the product and it will give you a very easy apply. So you saw that I'm just using very small passes, and then with the big brush I just smooth it a little bit down. So I'm not creating with the brush too much shadow, because I like inside a little bit the transparency of your shadowing. And then you will create a beautiful softness, because when I talk about Dialite, I don't want the color to be too hard in the hair. So here you created very smoothly in between. So, when I'm going to talk about my lightest color, I'm taking a neutralizing color like the 912 or the 1021, just to neutralize the lengths. And when I'm doing it, I work with vertical lines, smoothen down the roots, and we're gonna apply the color in the lengths. Just apply the color from midsection to lengths, smoothen it out, and take it all the way down. The best way to do your glossing is to work with vertical lines. The more you take horizontal lines, the more you lose of your color. So if you use two color, it's always better to have vertical lines. So each section I'm taking is vertical, blend it a little bit, and then take your next color, or even if you use your base color, so the 7.23 with the 7.80, you can also use beautifully in your next sectioning, and you take it all the way down. Be sure that you just blend. So I always keep in mind that it stays transparent, not too heavy. Clean your hands in between, and you take your next sectioning, and then one section on the ear, it's already done. So always make clean work. And then we start over again with your lightest color. Be sure that you really smudge the color through. So we're going to smudge the level 7 all the way down to the 10. So what happens with your multi-gloss is that the color I use on the base, the 7.23 with the 7.18, I smudge in the midsection, and then I take all the level 912 with the 1021 all the way down to the lengths. So that's how you work in a multi-tone gloss. Use vertical lines and start with a cool tone in the front or a warm tone. It depends a little bit on the skin tone, of course. Or you want to have a little bit more depth, you can also start with your base color from the roots, also making a shadow in front. So this is what you do all the way around, so you have all the hair tone it down. So each vertical lines at least with 2 tones. So as you saw here on the end result, I did a smudge with the 5.1 with a drop of 5.20 for the neutralization effect. And you saw that in the front, I just took a small triangle in the front out, and I take my shadow line, my base color, a little bit lower, but not all the way to the ends. So it gives the end result a little bit more depth in her face. So you can see that you can play a little bit with the depth. So it creates a little bit shadow, small triangle in the front, dark, and then you start, like I showed you before, with the multi-gloss, with the 10, 12 on this doll, the 723 underneath, 10, 12, 723. So each time you create some dimension in your gloss. And then you will create a beautiful multi-toned color on your guests and on your clients. So you see that also when I'm doing a shadow, it means that I take a little triangle in the front with my dia light. It's always good that if you create some depth, you always end up with your points lighter, just to give it that the color still stays very beautiful and very, as you can see, you create beautiful shades inside. You see petals of 1012, petals of 1023. Just easy, quickly, and you have a beautiful multi-tone that will give you your own signature in hair color, and that makes it a little bit different maybe than you used to do, but you can create beautiful, beautiful shades like this. So when we talk about those two bleaching techniques, balayage, so a foil balayage and a freehand paint, you see that the foil balayage was a very light, so it gives a very beautiful light effect in the lengths, but with the Majorel cool cover, remember 7.82, and you have 7.82, you can blend out with a beautiful 7.3 of the light in the lengths, and for neutralizations I use the 9.2. The 9.2 just to give a beautiful pearl look in the lengths. And with this kind of technique with the foil, you see that still I create a lot of dimension of the hair color inside. You see, inside we have dark, and with the foil, you remember, 2 times diagonal, horizontal, diagonal, horizontal, and you have a beautiful light effect with the Blonde Studio 9. So also beautiful multi-gloss. So multi-gloss, take care that you at least take 2 different shades in the length of the hair. I always advise to at least have 2 different levels. So if you use a level 7 on the roots, you can do from the 7 you go to an 8, but in the length at least you need a 9 or a level 10 if it's possible, if you lift well enough. But one of my favorite colors is really the 9.2, because it gives a beautiful, in the lengths you see a beautiful pearl. It almost looks like a beautiful sandy blonde. Yeah, okay. So I had made this afternoon a few different colors. So here you have the same technique, also the freehand paint, and here I used the 7.23 as a base color, only here I use it with 6-fold, so it gives a little bit more depth in the lengths. After I did a multi-gloss of the balayage, I did a multi-gloss with 2 kinds of colors, and also one for neutralization, and also one to give it a little bit more warm pigment. It's the 10.23 as a beige color, a beautiful beige gold, and some slices I did with a drop of 7.4. I really like to work with the dimension, and you see here that I created a little bit more more light in the lengths, but also again I play with the triangle in the front to give it a little bit more depth in her face. But you see the toner as a neutralization is the 10.23 with a drop of 7.4, just with 6-fold, and in between we have the 9.11, very cool, very ashy blonde, but it gives a beautiful combination in the choice of shades, because it's not only the technique that makes you a good colorist, it's also your taste of shades that you are using. So multi-gloss, once again, creates a lot of beautiful shades in the hair. And the beautiful thing also is that if you are putting the hair on top, I always think it's very nice that you really see the blending of the colors and the shades inside. So, yeah. So it gives you a lot of dimension, I think. And as soon as you're gonna work with it in the salon, you will notice that you will be very creative in choosing your shade. I always like, when you talk about cool, I always put a little warm or pearl tone next to it, or you work with a little bit more warmth and a little bit more cool. So it depends a little bit how far you can go on your client. But multi-gloss, really trust me, multi-gloss makes the dream work. Another combination of multi-gloss I did on my edgy haircuts. I did this afternoon, and you will see that here I did an inside color, and I did also a surface bleach. So remember, the surface bleach was when I took the petals out and I start bleaching. So here I just did a triangle on each side. So that means on each side I just took out a small triangle on each side, and a small triangle in the pony, in the fringe. Also you see a small triangle in the fringe and a small triangle on the sides. The rest is a global color. So on the roots I used Inoa, and I used a very beautiful brown 5.8 of Inoa. 5.8 on the roots I did with 10 vol, because I just wanna make the color very rich. And in the ends I did, after the balayage, I did the 9-2 with 6 vol on the balayage. So you see the combination that you will creating on this effect is that you still have a beautiful brunette, but when I'm doing like this kind of haircuts or bobs, I always like to play with the depth. So sometimes it's very easy just to apply 2 triangles of balayage, 1 triangle in the fringe, and then a global color on top. And one tip is that the next collection for spring-summer next year will be inside colors. Inside colors will be that we're gonna work with top colors on top, so a global color on top, 5.8 Inoa, 10 vol, and underneath we're going to work with inside. So inside the hair we're gonna have some surface bleach parts, and you can tone it beautifully with a 9-2, and use the 9-2 with a bit of clear, so 2/3 of 9-2, 1/3 of clear with 6 vol. So the 6 vol is a little bit more power, and it will give a beautiful pearl effect in the lens. So it still looks very edgy, but also it still looks very, very commercial, how you can work in your salon with this kind of techniques. So sometimes the impact of the placement of a color can be so powerful that even if you only have 2 triangles on the ears, 1 triangle in the back, in the fringe, and 2 triangles on each side, and just a global color will give so much impact on the choice and how a client can wear her beautiful haircut and her beautiful color. So the combination of balayage only on the side, beautiful dialite with 6 vol on the lengths, and you will see that it will give a beautiful pearly look. Only 2 triangles on each side and 1 triangle in the fringe. The rest is a global color, Inoa beautiful Mocha 5.8. Also very beautiful is Innova 4.15, a very beautiful chocolate color, and you can add it on the roots, chocolate, and then you go all the way down to a 5.8 or 7.8, and then work with the 9.2 of our newest colors of Dia Light. So, in the meanwhile, I put all my beautiful models back in front of the camera, and you know, every time when we invented new colors and we are creating new kind of technique, it's always the power of creating colors that you can use tomorrow in the salon. That's very important. I think with this Power Dust collection and multi-gloss, you can add beautiful shades on your French balayage. So I hope with this masterclass I give you a lot of information, I know, but the two techniques of balayage are very easy to do, and try them tomorrow in the salon. Try to work with your multi-gloss and add some clear to your colors. It will give a very beautiful vintage Power Dust look. Always be clear that when you work with multi-gloss, try to work with two different shades, like a very cool shade and a very warm shade, and you will create beautiful, beautiful looks. So, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure for me to do this masterclass for you. Try to take your advantage of it and try to use it on your client, making more profit, more rentability in your salon by doing techniques that are looking very luxury but are very easy to do in the salon. Thank you so much. I hope in Czech, in Slovakia, I hope to see you all very soon, and stay safe. Bye. Bye-bye.
Krásný dobrý večer, milí kadeřníci. Vítám vás ze studia u nás v Pražské akademii a stejně tak vítám Berniho u něho doma v Holandsku. Hi Berni, how are you today?
Hello everybody. I'm very glad to be with you all.
Tady s vámi mohu být.
Chtěl bych přivítat také Hanku, naší milou překladatelku. No a jak to teď bude probíhat? Vy jste položili Bernimu nějaké otázky, pokud samozřejmě budete mít ještě další dotazy, neváhejte nám napsat do komentářů a já je budu pokládat Bernimu a následně Berni vám bude odpovídat. Takže když se dostaneme k první otázce, kterou tu máme, tak můžu povídat. Berni, děkujeme za super webinář. Klientky v dnešní době spěchají. Chtěli by v rámci jedné návštěvy zakrýt bílé vlasy balayage a zároveň French glossing. Je to možné?
Okay, Berni, so let's start with our first question. Thank you very much for your masterclass. And the question is like this. Today clients are very busy, and in one visit they would like to cover their white hair, they would like to get balayage and French gloss at the same time. Is it possible? Samozřejmě to je možné a je to služba, kterou v salonu velmi často používám.
Další dotaz. Jak momentálně vnímáte kadeřnický biznis a jaký bude podle vás jeho vývoj?
In your opinion, how do you see the hairdressing business these days? And in your opinion, what is the future of hairdressing looking like?
Well, you know, it's for everybody. It's a strange time.
Tak jak asi víte, tak pro nás všechny je to velice zvláštní doba a musíme se poprat s těmi možnostmi, které máme k dispozici. Velice důležité je zůstávat napojení, být online, protože klientky spoléhají na to, že pokračujete ve vzdělávání. Myslím si, že budoucnost kadeřnického odvětví spočívá v tom, abychom se samozřejmě po všech těch problémech spojených s covidem opět setkávali a abychom si nadále uchovali skvělou kombinaci toho online přístupu s tím prezenčním, včetně vzdělávání.
Super, děkuji moc krát. Když se podíváme na další otázku, tak se nás tady ptá kadeřnice, proč máme kombinovat různé barvící systémy ke kořínkům, například mažirel a do délek dialite?
Another question from one of our hairdressers. Why are we supposed to use several coloration system? Why do you suggest to use mažirel on the roots and dialite on lengths and ends? Why is that? Samozřejmě, když používáme oxidační barvu, například u krytí bílých vlasů, tak použijete mažirel nebo barvy Inua na kořínky. A pro tu světlost a zesvětlení světlejší barvy, transparentnosti barvy je lepší použít dialite na délky, tak aby v těch délkách a konečcích nebyly příliš těžké, příliš syté produkty.
Super tip, díky moc krát. Další dotaz. Děláš rád online vzdělávání a různá videa? Baví tě to?
Very much for the tip. And another question concerns your online events. Do you enjoy preparing live online masterclasses? Tak samozřejmě je problém v tom, že během takových masterclassů online můžu používat pouze cvičné hlavy, takže si asi dovedete představit, jak je těžké prezentovat práci jenom na cvičných hlavách. Samozřejmě bych dal přednost živým modelkám, nicméně v dnešní době musíme být připraveni na naše nové techniky a nové trendy, takže je to hodně podobné. Když připravuji barvu na 3 cvičných hlavách, tak i tak mi to zabere zhruba půl dne, takže musím říct, že s těmi prezenčními semináři se to dost podobá.
Super, děkuji moc krát. Další dotaz tady mám. Jaký je rozdíl mezi French balayage a French glossing?
Another question, what is the difference between the French balayage and French glossing service? Tak samozřejmě zaprvé jde o to, že nejprve děláme French balayage, ať už je to foliage nebo malování volnou rukou. Vždycky musíte nejprve udělat French balayage a teprve následně vlastně tónujete s French glossing. Takže vlastně ta služba glossu, to tónování, používáte po jakékoliv té službě French balayage. Můžete samozřejmě French glossing použít také v případě, kdy děláte globální barvení a následně takto natónujete. Jsou to vlastně 2 jiné a zároveň navazující služby.
Díky moc krát. A následní dotaz od našeho dalšího diváka. French glossing je nová služba na salonu. Promítl si ji nějak do cen? Jak na to reagují klientky?
French glossing is a new service which has been introduced in our salons. Have you reflected it in your pricing? And how do clients react to these new prices? Víte, já si myslím, že je velice důležité, abyste si z těchto služeb vytvořili jakési menu. To znamená, abyste svým klientkám představili ten French glossing v rámci služby barvení, tak abyste měli snazší situaci. Samozřejmě všichni chceme vydělávat peníze, takže by salony měly být ziskovější, pracovat na svém zisku. Takže je dobré, když pracujete s French glossing nebo multiglossem, tak si to následně dobře nacení. Samozřejmě klientky budou vědět, že když používáte multiglossing, musí za to klientky více zaplatit. Důležité skutečně je, jak dobře zařadit tuto službu do svého menu barvicích služeb.
Super, děkuji moc krát. No a z toho mi vystává další otázka. Jak teda klientce představit službu French glossing? Co bys na té službě konkrétně vyzdvihnul?
Thank you very much for your answer. And this one leads us to another question. Actually, how would you introduce the French glossing service to your client? Tak samozřejmě French glossing je velice důležitá služba. U nás v salonu nikdy nedělám pouze doplňování odrostu. Vždycky kombinuji to doplnění odrostu s French glossing. Nevěřím tomu, že může klientka přijít pouze na krytí kořínku. Důležité je vždycky na konečky dodat i French glossing, tak aby vlasy dostaly krásný, zdravý, lesklý vzhled. To je, myslím si, naprosto nezbytné.
Super, díky moc. No a změnila se nějak frekvence návštěv u tebe na salonu? Máš nějaký tip na udržení klientely?
Given the times we are living in, have the frequency of visits in your salon changed? And can you share any tips about how to keep clients coming back? Samozřejmě je velice důležité uvědomit si, že klientky obvykle chodily každých 6 týdnů. Nyní se ten interval protáhl až na 8 týdnů. Ale u nás v salonu jsme představili novou službu. A to je služba, kdy jim poskytujeme 20% slevu, když se k nám vrátí už po 4 týdnech. To znamená, že klientky přijdou 3krát až 4krát za rok častěji díky této slevě. To znamená, že mám větší kontrolu nad jejich barvou a mohu poskytovat následně odpovídající službu. To je v našem salonu jedna věc. A druhý tip, klientky přijdou do salonu častěji, tak aby těch služeb mohly také využít víc. Takže to je druhý aspekt.
Super, díky moc krát za tip. A další dotaz bych tu měl. Jaké produkty doporučuješ při službě French Glossing pro dosažení total looku? Tipy na styling produkty? Máš své oblíbené produkty?
Okay, another question concerning French glossing and total look. Actually, what are the products you use? What styling products you can recommend? What tips can you share in terms of products?
Well, of course, the Techni Art line is
Určitě je tady široké portfolio Techni Art produktů, takže pokryje vlastně všechny potřeby vašich klientek. Pokud chcete dosáhnout většího objemu, pokud chcete vlasy uhladit, to vše z Techni Art dokážete. Samozřejmě záleží na tom, jaký typ účesu si klientka přeje. Záleží na jejím přání a podle toho volíme i ty stylingové produkty. Řada Techni Art je tak široká, že s ní vlastně obsáhneme jakoukoliv službu a vytvoříme jakýkoliv účes, který si klientka přeje.
Super, děkuju. A když se dostanu k dalšímu dotazu, jak dlouho nechat působit Dialight Multiglossing?
Okay, for Dialight Multiglossing, what is the time of pose? What is the development time? Tak vždycky je důležité dodržovat tu doktrínu barev Dialight a já každému kadeřníkovi říkám, že 20 minut u Dialight je naprostá nezbytnost. Akorát u milkshakeu platí 5 minut v salonu. Ale to jsou ty 01, 02, 903 odstíny. Každopádně jinak je to vždy těch jasně daných 20 minut.
Děkuji ti moc krát. A když se dostaneme k dalšímu dotazu, hodí se French Glossing k jakémukoliv střihu, nebo se hodí pro jakoukoliv klientku?
In terms of French glossing and haircuts, is French glossing suitable for any kind of haircut, for any kind of client?
Yes, of course. French glossing.
Určitě. French glossing, obzvlášť pokud hovoříme o použití nového klíru, tak si určitě dokážete představit, jakou škálu služeb s nimi dokážeme pokrýt. Samozřejmě můžeme udělat globální gloss na celé řadě klientek s celou řadou střihů. Nový klír od Dialight opravdu přináší prosvětlení, můžeme vlasy rozzářit, takže opravdu pro jakýkoliv střih je vhodný.
Výborně. A tímto jsme naše dotazy vyčerpali. Berni, já ti moc krát děkuju. Mám tady pro tebe ještě vzkaz od našich divaček a diváků. Děkujeme, Berni, jsi hvězda.
Excellent, Berni. Thank you very much for all your answers. You have actually answered all of our questions, and we have one message from one of our viewers who says, "Thank you very much, Berni. You are a star."
Thank you so much. I really miss you all.
Všichni mi opravdu strašně chybíte a já strašně moc doufám, že nejpozději příští rok už se naživo opravdu všichni setkáme.
A já vám tímto děkuji a jsme rádi, že jste byli s námi. Doufám, že se vám líbil masterclass Berního. No a budeme se zase na vás těšit někdy příště. Přejeme krásný večer, mějte se hezky, na viděnou.